ABC General Hospital spoilers reveal that there are some secrets in Port Charles that feel dangerous the moment they are born. And then there are secrets that do not simply threaten one life but begin to poison every bond around them. The truth about Rocco being the one who shot Cullum belongs to the second kind. It is not only a buried act of violence, it is a chain reaction disguised as silence, a wound hidden beneath too many layers of love, guilt, fear, and desperate protection. The longer that truth remains buried, the more power it gains, and Brennan is exactly the kind of man who can smell that kind of hidden power from a distance. He does not need a confession gift-wrapped and placed in his hand. He only needs one fracture in someone's composure, one contradiction in a statement, one trembling pause from the wrong person at the wrong time, and then everything begins to unfold in his mind with terrible clarity. Brennan has spent enough time around lies to know that the most convincing ones are always built out of sacrifice. Jason stepping forward to absorb the consequences makes the official story sound noble on the surface, but that is exactly what draws Brennan's suspicion. He understands institutions, he understands covert operations, and more than anything, he understands how families destroy themselves to protect the youngest person in the room. Jason taking the fall does not read to Brennan like closure, it reads like interference. It reads like someone larger and stronger stepping in front of the bullet after the shot has already been fired. That is the kind of pattern a WSB mind cannot leave alone. What begins as curiosity quickly turns into obsession, because Brennan is not just hunting a fact. He is hunting leverage, and in the world he inhabits, leverage matters more than truth. At the center of that obsession stands Valentin, still looming over the lives of the people who love him, even in absence, still shaping choices through fear, loyalty, and unfinished grief. Brennan's interest in Valentin is no longer abstract, no longer professional in any clean sense. Cullum's emergence has changed the temperature of everything. A figure like Cullum does not simply complicate a mission, he destabilizes the field. He creates the kind of institutional panic that makes agencies turn inward, purge weakness, and claw for control before their rivals do the same. Brennan can feel the WSB slipping into a more volatile phase, and he refuses to be swallowed by the chaos. He wants control back. He wants the narrative back. He wants to prove that he can restore order where other men allowed rot to spread. And in his mind, the fastest way to do that is to bring Valentin out of the shadows and force every hidden alliance into the light. That is what makes Charlotte so valuable and so vulnerable. She is not merely Valentin's daughter, she is the emotional territory through which everyone around Valentin can still be reached. Brennan understands that before Charlotte even sees the trap closing around her. He knows she is old enough to understand danger, but still young enough to be shredded by divided loyalties. He knows that she loves deeply, and people who love deeply are always easier to corner because they can be made to believe that betrayal is another form of rescue. Brennan does not need Charlotte to trust him. He only needs her to fear what will happen if she refuses him. That difference is what makes him so much more dangerous than an ordinary villain. He is not driven by rage in the obvious way. He is driven by strategy, by the cold belief that if human hearts must be crushed to produce the right outcome, that is simply the cost of doing necessary work. The moment Brennan realizes Rocco is the real shooter, the entire emotional geometry of Port Charles changes. Rocco stops being a frightened boy carrying unbearable guilt and becomes, in Brennan's mind, a pressure point. Jason stops being just another stubborn protector and becomes evidence of a cover-up. Charlotte stops being a grieving, conflicted daughter and becomes a path. Once Brennan sees the shape of it, he cannot unsee it. He starts reconstructing every glance, every strange silence, every protective move made by Lulu, by Jason, by anyone who stepped too quickly into the chaos after Cullum fell. He sees what guilt looks like when it is redirected. He sees what fear looks like when adults try too hard to appear calm for the sake of children. He sees the architecture of a secret built in haste and sustained by love. And love, to Brennan, is only useful when it can be manipulated. Charlotte becomes aware of his attention before she fully understands how much he knows. That is what makes the shift in her world so terrifying. Nothing is spoken outright at first. Brennan does not begin with a threat. He begins with presence. He begins with questions that feel too precise, with a tone that pretends concern while probing for weakness, with the kind of unnerving patience that tells Charlotte she is already standing on unstable ground. She has lived too close to danger, too close to Valentin's life, too close to the machinery of pursuit and escape, not to recognize that feeling. She knows what it means when an adult starts speaking softly instead of sharply. It means they have stopped trying to force a reaction and started waiting for the truth to reveal itself on its own. It means they believe they already have the upper hand. Charlotte's terror is not simple. That is what makes her inner conflict so devastating. If this were only about Valentin, she would suffer and still remain defiant. She has inherited too much from him not to cling to loyalty even when it hurts. But Rocco changes everything. Rocco is not an abstraction. He is not a fugitive father wrapped in conflicting memories and old wounds. He is immediate. He is fragile. He is someone she can picture breaking under interrogation, collapsing under blame, drowning in shame he was never meant to carry alone. Brennan does not need to explain in graphic detail what could happen to Rocco if the WSB gets hold of the truth. Charlotte already knows enough about the institution to imagine it herself, and what she imagines is worse because it comes from memory and fear instead of spoken threat. She knows agencies like the WSB do not protect innocence. They weaponize vulnerability. They strip context from pain and turn children into liabilities, assets, examples. She cannot bear the thought of Rocco being processed by that kind of machinery. That is the point at which Brennan's restraint becomes cruelty. He lets Charlotte arrive at the horror on her own. He lets her sit with it. He lets the silence do what explicit blackmail sometimes cannot. And then, only when the fear has rooted itself, he shifts from implication to direction. He does not frame it as betrayal, he frames it as responsibility. He does not say hand over Valentin. He says help stop the chaos before more people get hurt. He does not say save Rocco by sacrificing your father. He says there are moments when one painful choice prevents a larger tragedy. It is a monstrous tactic precisely because it borrows the language of maturity and duty. Brennan does not want Charlotte hysterical. He wants her morally cornered. He wants her to feel that refusal would make her complicit in Rocco's destruction. In another corner of Port Charles, Rocco is already beginning to fracture beneath the weight of what he has done. His guilt is not theatrical. It is quiet, corrosive, increasingly visible in the way he withdraws, in the way ordinary moments feel too loud for him, in the way every expression of kindness from the people around him becomes another knife because he knows it is built on a lie. The tragedy of Rocco is that he is too young to carry something so catastrophic and already old enough to know that what happened cannot simply be wished away. He lives in the terrible space between accident and consequence, between intention and damage. That kind of guilt alters a person from the inside. It makes them fear sleep, fear comfort, fear the possibility of being seen too clearly. Every time Charlotte looks at him, she is confronted not only by her love for him, but by the unbearable truth that his life could be destroyed by a single choice she makes. Brennan senses the weakening structure around both children and becomes more aggressive because Cullum's shadow is widening over the WSB itself. Cullum's presence did not just create operational fallout. It exposed fractures in authority, failures in control, and vulnerabilities Brennan now believes only he is ruthless enough to address. His desire to seize control of the WSB is not born from idealism. It is born from the cold conviction that institutions belong to whoever can act most decisively, while everyone else is still pretending morality will slow the bloodshed. He sees rivals hesitating. He sees old loyalties clouding judgment. He sees the agency threatened by internal compromise and external embarrassment. In that climate, delivering Valentin becomes more than a mission. It becomes proof. Proof that Brennan can do what others could not. Proof that he knows how to leverage emotion better than his enemies know how to shield it. Proof that chaos can be turned into ascent if handled by the right pair of hands. That ambition changes the way he approaches every move. Brennan is no longer just chasing a target. He is constructing a demonstration. If he can manipulate Charlotte into giving up Valentin while simultaneously keeping the Rocco secret under his private control, he achieves multiple goals at once. He destabilizes Valentin, isolates the family units around him, undermines Jason's sacrifice, and creates a debt of silence that keeps Charlotte emotionally shackled to him long after the immediate crisis passes. That is the true horror of Brennan's strategy. He does not want a single victory. He wants a network of dependency. He wants people trapped in arrangements they can never speak about without destroying themselves. Charlotte begins to come apart under the pressure in a way that is heartbreaking precisely because it is so controlled on the surface. She does not explode. She shrinks. She starts measuring every word, every facial expression, every interaction with Lulu, with Rocco, with anyone who might accidentally force her to reveal too much. Her childhood seems to evaporate in slow motion. The girl who once reacted emotionally now becomes watchful, exhausted, frighteningly composed. That transformation is not strength, it is survival. She is trying to calculate an escape from a trap designed by someone who understands that children raised near danger mature in all the wrong ways. She considers telling Lulu, but fear stops her. She considers running to Valentin, but that could expose him faster. She considers doing nothing, but Brennan has made inaction feel like a death sentence for Rocco. Each path before her feels like a form of betrayal, and that is what breaks her. Not the threat itself, but the realization that there may be no morally clean way out. The emotional cruelty of the situation deepens because Charlotte still loves Valentin with the stubborn, wounded devotion of a child who has seen the world condemn her father again and again. She knows his flaws. She knows his lies. She knows the danger that seems to gather around him like weather. But love does not become simpler because it is informed. It becomes heavier. If she gives Brennan what he wants, she is not only turning against Valentin, she is confirming every fear he ever planted in her about institutions, about enemies, about people who smile while setting the knife. Yet if she protects him, she may be sacrificing Rocco to a system she despises. Her heart is pulled in opposite directions until loyalty itself becomes a form of torture. The larger tragedy is that Brennan may convince himself he is justified. Men like him are most frightening when they stop seeing their own brutality as brutality. He can look at Charlotte's anguish and reduce it to collateral strain. He can look at Rocco's terror and classify it as unfortunate but useful. He can look at Jason's sacrifice and interpret it as obstruction rather than love. This is how power corrupts even the intelligent. It does not always make them irrational. Sometimes it makes them chillingly rational, able to explain every monstrous choice in language polished enough to sound responsible. Brennan tells himself that if he restores control to the WSB, if he contains the fallout from Cullum, if he neutralizes Valentin, then the damage done along the way will have served a greater order. But that is the lie ambitious men tell when they begin consuming the innocent to stabilize the systems that failed them. As the pressure builds, the silence around Rocco's secret becomes a living thing. It infects conversations, it changes the atmosphere of rooms. People begin to sense that something is wrong even if they cannot yet define it. Lulu feels the distance. Jason senses the structure holding his false guilt in place is becoming unstable. Charlotte becomes more difficult to read, which only intensifies suspicion around her. Brennan, meanwhile, grows more confident, and confidence makes him bolder. He starts moving not like a man searching for proof, but like a man who already has enough. That shift is often when catastrophe becomes inevitable. The more certain he becomes that he can control all sides of the situation, the more likely he is to underestimate the emotional blast radius of what he is doing. Because the truth Brennan is handling is not a sterile file. It is bound to a child's panic, a sister's impossible choice, a father's shadow, a family's instinct to protect, and an agency's hunger for dominance. It cannot be contained forever. Secrets like this never stay where powerful men put them. They leak through conscience, grief, jealousy, desperation, through one cracked moment when someone can no longer bear the performance. And when that moment comes, Brennan may discover too late that blackmail is easiest at the beginning, when fear is fresh and isolated. Once pain spreads, once too many people are pulled into the same web, fear hardens into fury. That is the stage he may be racing toward without fully grasping it. What makes this storyline so explosive is not only the possibility that Brennan exposes Rocco, it is the darker possibility that he succeeds too well before everything collapses. If Charlotte actually gives him something real about Valentin, if Brennan gains the upper hand inside the WSB, if Jason's sacrifice begins to unravel under external pressure, then every character involved will be pushed into the ugliest version of love they possess. Protective love will become controlling, guilty love will become self-destructive, loyal love will become treacherous. And Brennan, standing at the center of that unraveling, may finally get the control he craves, only to find that he has ignited a chain of damage no institution can contain. In the end, the most haunting part of this entire story is that Charlotte may be forced to grow up in a single brutal decision. Not because she is ready, not because she is strong enough, but because Brennan has decided her heart is the shortest route to the outcome he wants. That is what makes his pursuit of control feel so poisonous. It is not merely strategic, it is intimate. He is invading the most sacred space in these lives, the fragile place where family love still tries to survive amid lies and danger, and he is turning that space into a battlefield. If Brennan truly knows Rocco is the shooter, then the secret is no longer just a hidden crime. It is a fuse. And once he starts using Charlotte to reach Valentin, once he ties Rocco's fate to that demand, Port Charles will not simply face another scandal. It will face the kind of emotional detonation that leaves every survivor altered, every bond mistrusted, and every victory tasting like ash.